And hello there, good afternoon, welcome to Rob's Models. I'm Rob and thanks for dropping in today. Filming this one live, going out live on YouTube, but what I'll be doing is keeping this as a replay and hopefully trying to add in some of the high resolution photos, those sort of things as well. We'll see how that goes, but it is an unboxing. Just the other week we had a big release from Airfix, which was big, massive. I reviewed it as well, the Airfix 1:72 scale Vulcan bomber, massive, really looking forward to doing that. This is another, I would say, big release. For some people, this release does actually mean quite a lot. It's smaller. It's 1:48 scale, so it's a bigger scale, but it's still going to be a lot smaller than what that Vulcan's going to be. And if you haven't worked it out, probably from the title, it probably gives it away. It is going to be the Chipmunk in 1:48 scale. So it got the box here. It turned up the other day, had it on pre-order, and the reason why I think it's going to be a big release, for lots of people, this is just going to fly over the head. It's not going to, many people aren't really going to pay much attention to this. However, if anyone is in the Air Cadets, especially around the time when I was, you've got your little blue logbook and all that. Some people would know the Chipmunk very well because they actually flew in a Chipmunk when they were a teenager in the Air Cadets. I did, and I'm sure many people do. The old, you have control, sir, I have control, and all that sort of thing. We can do jokes about that all the time. But yeah, for those people who actually flew in one of them, then actually this is going to be a big release sort of thing, because it's something where it's all well and good doing Vulcans and big, Lancaster bombers and those sort of things, but lots of people actually have a direct connection to actually having sat in a Chipmunk and actually flown, not only just sat in there, flown in it, but had a flight. Not many people can actually say that they've actually had a go at flying, even if it was just in a straight line, and then the guy who was the pilot took over and then started doing weird barrel rolls and stall turns and basically making you throw up, which was I think what their main job was. But a few years back I did this, which is the little 1:72 scale kit of this. We'll see come in a little bit there. And this, to be honest, the reason I did this kit is when I was in Air Cadets, there was one of these on display actually. Some of the other cadets had actually done this model, and they had actually dropped the wings down, the little flaps and stuff. And actually, a few years back, I went to Riyadh, the big Royal International Air Tattoo, and there was actually a couple of Chipmunks parked up. I think it was to do with the 100th anniversary of the RAF, and actually it reminded me. And I just started getting back into modelling as a hobby, and this is one of the first sort of kits I made as an adult. I had to hunt it down, and it is an old kit. Lots of raised detail on there, big raised rivets, way over scale, but it kind of gives it a bit of depth. The decals are all sort of silvered and horrible. You can literally, rub it over. You can hear how much that raised detail and rivets are. So it is quite chunky. It was one. I think actually this is probably the first aircraft I actually painted with an airbrush, and I was using Humbrol paints, so it came out really horrible. I didn't know what I was doing, and actually I found this in the attic a while back, and actually did a little post-build review on this one, actually, just because I thought it was a little interesting one, a little bit of history of that. And it wasn't long after I did that Airfix actually announced they were going to be redoing this, but not in the 72nd scale, but in the 48 scale. So that's a little bit of history, and what we'll do is no doubt have a little bit of a comparison. Although one thing I do remember with this one is you do have the two people in there, but I do recall that there's absolutely no cockpit or any detail in there at all. In fact, I remember having to make some little blanking plates just to try to make it so there was actually not an instrument panel, but at least there just wasn't going to be a big gap going through. And I remember just dropping the flaps again just to give it a little bit more presence, I guess, just so it didn't look quite so straight on. So hopefully we'll the 48 scale will be have a bit more detail than that, and I'm not too sure how old that kit is. I probably should have looked it up, but judging the box art, it wouldn't surprise me if it was like 70s sort of tooling or something. I'm not too sure, but if you want to, you can find the little review on that one on my channel, and I think in there I also took some photos of the build process as well. So that's interesting. But what we're here for now is this, which is I'm hoping what's in there. If it isn't, it's going to be quite a surprise. So, one of the things I ordered this a while back, and I've got to say, with Hornby now, I do find, and I found this with the Vulcan, when you pre-order, they don't take the money until actually it's ready to be sort of shipped. But what I've found is that actually they'll take the money, and then it's a few more days before it's shipped. And this was actually sent by Hermes. And I've got to say, it seemed to take quite a while before it turned up. I say quite a while, a few days. But on the tracking that I got from it, it did actually say it was waiting to be sort of like... I think I'd actually received it by the time Hermes had actually got it on their system, that they had actually received it from Hornby Hobbies, which is a little bit odd, although I think that's more to do with sort of like Hermes, not Airfix and Hornby. So... here we are, so there's the box, out there, and I've got my little packing slip, yep, that's me, and this is, got an elastic band around it, I'm not too sure, oh, it would just be to keep the packing slip on, ta-da, no, wrong way up, there we go, this is it, got to take that elastic band off, that'll be useful for sort of nice large size elastic band, that'll be useful for something, no doubt, one day when making a massive model and needing to hold wings on. So there we are, let's have a bit of a look at that, shall we? There it is, that is the traditional sort of colours in there, and although you can immediately see there's 4 different options on there, including one in camouflage, I'm going to be pretty confident that most people, especially in the UK, are going to be building that version. The basically, there we go, that's the, actually that is slightly different. Okay, that's interesting. I was just going to say the grey markings on there is different to there. That's just got red wingtips, whereas that's got a whole red leading edge, and the grey's the back portion of the wing. Oh, well, we'll look at that in a bit more detail. But that is a nice bit of box art. In fact, let's bring it down a little bit more. Let's even bring it down even more, actually. So, size of this, 1/42. No, yeah, no, 1/48, not 1/42. That actually comes in about 28 centimetres by, how wide is that box? That's, yeah, sort of 15, 16 centimetres. So, decent sort of size box. And actually for a 1/48 scale, it probably is sort of quite small. In fact, this is probably something like what a 1/72 jet would sort of fit in. But as we know, it is a small aircraft. And so let's have a look. Actually, before we go in there, let's just see. So we have got the different colour options, which we'll go through. In fact, I believe looking at that one, the third one down looks to be the trainer version that we've got there. But we'll look into that. No, it's not. The wings are... okay, we'll have a bit of a look. But you've got 4 different versions. On this side, normal warnings in many languages. And again, a bit more of the box art there. And I think, yeah, the same on there. And here we are here. So, the 1/48 scale de Havilland Chipmunk T10. The first aircraft type designed and built by de Havilland, Canada. The Chipmunk took to the skies in May 1946, so it is post-war, and immediately gained interest by the military. By April 1948, the Royal Canadian Air Force had taken delivery of the first Chipmunk, but they were not the only ones admiring this plane. The majority of the 1,283 Chipmunks would be manufactured under license in the UK. And it just goes through a little bit more detail of them. And we've actually got here the sizes. So the length of it is going to be 164 millimeters, which is going to be about 6.5 inches. Width is actually wider, is 218. So you're looking there probably about just 8-9 inches wide, and 84 pieces to it. We've got the little description of the 4 different markings we've got there. So we've got the camouflage marking. So we've got the colours of the number 2 flying training school in Saffron Walden, Essex in 2020. You've got one which was basically the first British Chipmunk displayed at Farnborough in 1949. Then you've got the Royal Navy Historic Flight, Yeovilton, Somerset, and that's the 2009, and a Chipmunk from the Army Air Corps, and that's the one in the camouflage one, in Middlewallop, Hampshire, England, 1968. And actually, the Somerset and the Hampshire ones, Farnborough and Hampshire, are not too far away from where I live, actually. So that's quite interesting. And ironically, I flew the one that was in that scheme when I was in Air Cadets. So I'll have to have a think. And actually, I'm looking at that camouflage one, and that would actually be quite an interesting build to do. Yeah, anyway. Oh, and there you go. It's 1 flying hours. Gives you the list of all the things, and it's a skill level 2. So, right, let's have a look in the box. This open. I know I'm a bit late to the party with doing the reviews, but I've been busy this weekend when it did turn up. So let's bring it out a little bit more and see what we got there. Right, so we have got a bag of bits, and in actual fact this one, unlike the Vulcan and a few of the other Airfix ones recently where they've been going into individual bags, this looks like they've bagged up the whole lot in one, whereas it had been different sprues. And we've got instructions and decals. So, in fact, actually what's immediately jumping out is this instruction booklet is a lot thicker than what I thought it was going to be, actually. I recall when doing this one, the instructions were about 4 parts, and if I recall, they were actually on the back of the box. So, yeah, I think we can see this one's going to be a little bit more in depth. So, let's have a look through these. By the way, I know I'm going through this on the live stream. What I'll probably do is take that and then superimpose the high resolution photos over the top, and hopefully the camera will keep focus through this. Actually, so let's pop you down a bit more again. So have a look there. So we've got the little bit of blurb on there, which is basically the same as it was on the box, and gives a little bit more information. So the maximum speed 138 miles per hour, range 259 miles, wingspans 34 foot, and length it's 25.5 foot. So let's open up. Get this out of the way there. So, standard sort of thing. Actually got quite a few more languages than... Okay, so first off, just going to be building up the cockpit, sort of the seat, with a very, very basic seats, if I recall. You literally just sit in the frame. You actually have the parachute strapped onto your bum, and you've got to waddle up to the aircraft. And if I recall, they absolutely scare the life out of you by showing you videos about how you're going to crash and die in them. So, yeah, building up the very simple basic cockpit tub. So it really is just a simple cushion going into a sort of a steel tub there. Got to do a little bit of drilling by the look of it, just to open up a few little holes there, which does surprise me to go straight in with 1mm holes, just to build a few little bits. And as that comes together, it's not a huge amount. It is quite, if I recall, it is quite a sparse interior. And as with the new sort of Airfix design, with these, the sub builds from what you've done in previous parts are in red. So cockpit hub comes together. Looks like we got the. It looks like we should have quite a bit of detail actually moulded onto the sides. Control sort of surfaces going in there. And 2 halves coming, blanking plate at the back. Then we've got a bulkhead at the front, putting on the oil tank. Would that be a fuel tank? Probably an oil tank. That's going to come in. Decals for the instrument panels. So at least you've got an instrument panel on this one. So no engine in there, but just the front of the engine. Oh no, hang on. No, of course it is. Here's the engine. Okay, so we do actually have an engine to this. Don't know how much, and if I recall, it's the inverted something or other. Oh, whatever the engine is, basically it's inverted. It's an upside down engine. I'm sure someone will remember what it was. It will come to me later. An inverted? No, forgot it. Anyway, little spinner bit goes in there. Little axle for it isn't getting glued in, so that should rotate. You've got the exhaust manifolds. So actually, that's looking quite a nice detailed engine. It looks like you've got fins round the pistons, you know, sort of for the air cooling, and struts. So actually, that looks like that's going to be quite a nice bit of detail on there. Actually, I'm just trying to, if I just come in a little bit, hopefully it gives you an idea. You can see the sort of like the radiator fins on that engine, and building up the manifolds around there, and got the struts that they're going to be on there. So it does seem a shame to sort of cover it up. So although it's just showing in the closed position, I'm sure with a little bit of fettling, wouldn't be too much, be able to actually have that so those are opened. I don't know whether the gull wing drop down or just take off completely, but a quick search on the internet I'm sure will show. Looks like the main bottom of the wing is just one big long bit, so that's going to make sure that it keeps that dihedral shape without sagging. That's just going to clip on there, and then the top surfaces are going to go on there. And we've got the ailerons on there. So actually, with this one, I cut, which I believe are the flaps, dropped the flaps down. But that one, those surfaces are immovable. However, I was going to say those are going to be posable, but they're not looking like they actually just slot in. So they looks just slots, but I'm sure what you can do is before slotting them in, slightly bend the little tab so they go in at an angle. That's what I've done on a few models before, but it's definitely a lot easier than trying to cut them off. And here we go for the tail plane. They just come together, so it doesn't look, oh no, that's fine. So rudder is actually we've got two different variants. Actually got two different rudders. So there's A, C and D, but the B variant, which is the very first one actually, which is the one that flew in 1949 at Farnborough Air Show, that's got a slightly different rudder with a slightly larger top on there. A few little stabilisers, and again it's looking like the ailerons at the back, they slot in. I'm not too sure whether they're going to be tabs, so they might be posable as well. Whether they're designed to be posable or whether you can just do a little bit of modification. Landing gear, the landing gear are always down, and this doesn't have retractable landing gear, so you don't have the option for that one. So you can pose it how you want. Although at the moment I've not seen any pilots, so you probably won't be posing it in flight. Two different types by the look of it. Why would you be doing that? Okay, okay, that seems to be a bit wonky. I'm not too sure what the difference is there. I'm guessing, no, okay. That took me a moment just to work it out. It's quite obvious there. If you're doing it where it's parked up, you're going to use those landing gear where it looks like the actual suspension's being compressed. And if it's going to be an in-flight, you'd be using that landing gear where that's going to be slightly extended. The push rod's going to be slightly extended out, so that's going to show it taking weight. But of course it doesn't look like we have a pilot to it, so that might be a bit null and void actually, having an aircraft that's in flight if you've not got a pilot. Then of course we've got the rear landing gear. We will have to check the wheels. I think they're looking round. Sometimes Airfix do weighted effect wheels. Those look perfectly round. I would have thought there would have been, if there's an option for an up and a down, whether it's taking weight, whether you'd have tyres that show it's taking weight, which is a little bit odd. If it's not, just showing you how to fit the rear wheel. Then a few little actuators on there, airspeed reader, pitot tubes, little aerial that comes down, little aerial here and there. Okay, I was talking earlier about whether, actually let's just jump back. So when this come on, this is showing to cover it with B6, but here, that's okay. If you had been doing this, it doesn't actually show this as an optional. It's just essentially just telling you to glue these parts on. However, when we come to here, you can see that actually they can go on in the up position, and it does actually show you gull wing fashion as I thought. But it's a little bit odd that if you had actually just been following that straight through and following it by the book, you would have actually just put those covers on. Note: when building this model, the engine side covers open, ascend all parts below and reverse steps 16, 17. So, I'm sure many people will be building it with the engine covers up. What's nice actually is that it looks like you can detail the engine up and have the engine covers. It doesn't. It's a pity that you couldn't change them. Like the Tamiya 109 that I did recently had the magnet, so you could actually open and close the cowlings to display how you wanted to display. So all canopy framing is black inside. So actually that's the first time I've seen that on an Airfix kit, but just confirms it's a black interior. There we go. Do not glue. What was that? Oh, there's a jig. Okay, so we've got a little jig just to assemble some of the parts there. So you're going to be building up. Okay, building up the canopy in parts. Actually, it's not just a one-piece canopy, or at least got the side parts. There we go. Do have some pilots in there after all. Normally they would have been put in a bit sooner, and just got a few little handles and things there. So actually that is looking like that's quite detailed. Hopefully the camera wasn't popping in and out too much when I was doing that. And this is different to how that one was in the 72nd scale kit. As you can see, you've got the red on the leading edges and the grey on the back part of the wings. So that's basically the Havilland. That's the dry flying school, which is in 2020. So that's probably going to be the colours that most people are going to go for, because people who buy the Chipmunk are probably remembering what the Chipmunk was, and therefore they're probably going to be reminiscing about it, and you know, that's why they're buying it. Gives you the colour codes for it in Humbrol, obviously. Now this is the version. Actually, if I recall, this kit when I got it might have even come in that sort of silver version. And then they re-released it with that one. I can't remember which way round. I might have even just painted that one. I think actually when I got that kit years ago, it was actually for this sort of more of the bare metal finish the design, and I just went freehand with that, or used reference pictures, so I'm not too sure. But anyway, there we go. So that's going to be the bare metal finish one, but that's basically going to be the one that flew at Farnborough in 1949. This one is a little bit more reminiscent, as in if you look at the wings. I mean, the weird thing is actually that the scale of these pictures is bang on the scale of the 1 to 72nd aircraft. How's that for weird? And you can see that the same sort of design there. However, it's when you get to the side view that's going to be different. That's sort of got more of the grey fuselage. So that's the Ovalton one. And finally, this one is going to be quite an interesting one. I mean, I am tempted to do a few versions of this because the kit isn't massively expensive. We'll see how the first one turns out. But doing one in that sort of more camouflage colour is going to be quite interesting. So, would be. Oh, hang on. Sorry, I didn't realise we'd already had a comment on there. Lord Sidious, hello. Would be cool if it came with Irish Air Corps decals. Oh, not something you see every day. No, it's not something you see every day, and that would be good actually. No, that would be a good. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's nice that they actually done it in the first place. But yeah, I'm sure that there will be aftermarket decals on this as well. And what I'm actually thinking is, I don't know if I might go rogue myself on this one anyway, because it would be great. I've still got it somewhere, my little logbook from when I was an Air Cadet and I flew in one of these. And I've got a feeling that, I mean, I don't know, but that box art version is the 2020 version. And I'm sure that when I was flying it, might have been sort of like more like that version. I don't know. But see if I can find some more photos maybe from people in Air Cadets, and see if I could find out the number of the aircraft I went up in, what scheme they were flying it, and if I need to get some decals or something. It would just be nice to be able to make an aircraft and then say that's a model of the one that I flew. I think that would be pretty cool. Anyway, right, let's see what we've got next. Let's do decals next. So here we are. Let's come in a bit again there. So hang on. Oh, so just get that. Oh, thumbs up for your commitment to a 3-strong audience. Yeah, no, don't worry. I'm just going. I mean, I'm realising that although I'm doing it live, I'm assuming most people are going to be watching the replays and stuff anyway. It just saves me editing it later. So anyway, Decals are looking pretty good. I must say, the Airfix decals recently I have been finding quite enjoyable actually. They do go down really well. The registration on them is all good, looking quite clear, good roundels, haven't got any bleeding through onto the whites or anything like that, and a good selection. So yeah, I have been finding that with the, I mean, top one's all the sort of the standard. So yeah, pretty pleased with how they're going to go. Those little walkway bits, probably paint them on anyway. Interesting to see actually, you've also got decals for the prop, which is a bit odd. I'm guessing most people would probably try to paint them on, but I guess it's nice to see that. Try decals as in French, because that's where they're from. Decals. God, I always said decals. I've got into arguments about this before actually. Decals, decals, and I forget which version I even say now, but they're looking all right. That's what I'm going to say on those ones. And I've got to say they do. If they're like the ones that they've done on previous recent ones, they'll bed down quite nicely. I found that they go on really well. What we're really here for though is the plastic, and it is a bit disappointing that they've stuck them all in a plastic bag. Although it shouldn't really make too much difference with this one. So first off, actually we got the clear parts. So mainly it is spread over, including the clear one, 4 sprues. 3 if you're not including the one. And actually straight away I'm seeing that there's actually some very nice sort of detail on there, and a nice sort of ribbing, stretched fabric effect on there. And that is actually, we're going to look at this in a bit more detail in a minute, but hopefully that is just catching the light. We've got quite a nice, you have got some raised rivets on there, but I've got to say those rivets in 40-second scale are smaller than the rivets on there, or about the, yeah, smaller than the ones that are in 70 seconds. So 48 scale rivets are smaller than 72nd scale rivets, according to Airfix. No, that's just an old and terrible kit. So where shall we start? Actually, let's just start with this one. So, in fact, what we can do is we can just sort of, yeah, you can have a bit of an idea there. So you just got your main spar going across there, but hopefully we have now got, whoa, a mess of an office, but there we are. So gives you a little bit of an idea. You can see there is a bit of a raised detail going on there, and actually some fine detail. Now it is quite odd that those flaps, they've got some very, very big sort of panel lines going on there, and why they didn't do them separate is beyond me. However, there is some good texture to that. I don't know how well that's showing up. If I try and get it so there's a bit of a shadow looking down it, no, that's not going to work. But it's definitely, you can see the spars on there and the stretched panel. That is actually that's really nice actually. The rivets that you got on there, raised rivets, but they are very fine and some good texture to them. And also you've got some good sort of quite fine panel lines on there. So both on top and the bottom of the wings, some of the access points. That is actually looking quite good. And if we look on we have actually got some quite big ejector pin marks. However, those are going to be inside, not going to be seen. But fortunately, yeah, I reckon that the flaps would be cut because they are big. I mean, I had to do that on this little one when I did this years ago, done those flaps and actually just cut them, and they are quite big. It's just surprised me that they've done the ones on the edge, but not those main ones there, which does seem a little bit odd. But yeah, I think that wouldn't be too much problem for anyone just to do that. Just finishing Tamiya Harrier. Yeah, that one, and the decals are the best bit of the kit. I know that Harrier because I've also done that one. What a absolute terrible kit that was. Everyone says Tamiya do great kits, and they've not tried to do that FRS one, have they? But no, that's looking good. This is, trust me, this is looking better than that Tamiya kit. Let's go on to next one. So we'll go on to this sprue next. So this is the main fuselage parts. We've got a few other little bits of detail on there. I've got to say the pilots on there, they're both exactly the same. which hands in the same place and everything. And I just think if you've got two pilots and they're sat next to each other in what's going to be quite visible, and you can even see on this one, even though I've sort of cocked up the things of treat, you can still see that it's the same pilot in both the front and the back seats. So it is quite softly moulded, I've got to say, those pilots. I mean, they should be fine, but it's just not quite crisp detail. I mean, actually, this should be fine once you give a bit of a paint, put a wash on there. But let's look at those fuselage halves on this side first of all. Again, so fine riveting detail, and also not the finest, but quite fine panel lines. It should take a wash quite nicely. I mean, these things being trainers weren't getting really dirty. That's one thing to bear in mind. Have to make sure that when you build it, that you sort of keep it clean. Yeah, they're not going to be getting, you know, covered in mud and everything on a regular basis. Flipping over, I was just going to look at the internal parts. We'll zoom in a little bit more in a moment. However, what is quite odd is the pilots have still got actually full detail on straps of their parachutes and all of that, and you can see that they are actually sat on the parachutes as you had to waddle with the parachute strapped to your ass to get into these things. But you have got that all detailed on the back, which is a little bit odd because you're not going to see that. But well done, Airfix. Inside, some of these bits, to be honest, they are quite detailed. However, some of those controls could have actually easily been separate parts. So not too sure. I think Airfix have done this in a way to keep it kind of simple as well. Maybe almost like an introduction to 48 scale. I think that's probably what they've probably done a little bit, is to maybe hold back on some, not loads, but maybe make it a little bit more easier to do a detailed one. But bit of, you know, careful painting, a little bit of dry brushing, that should work quite well there. Looks like a cracking kit though. Yeah, for about 20 quid, to be honest, it should, yeah, it's not that expensive. So hang on, let's give you a bit more of a close up on that as well. So yeah, if we just see, actually, let's first of all look at those little fellas we've got on there. So yeah, they are sort of, well, come on, got to focus on there. But it's just, I think one of it's, because it's just softly moulded. Details there, but it's not quite crisp. You haven't quite got the hard edges. Another thing on the back, you can just see, still got the straps. Well, it wants to focus on that, but you can still see the straps on the back, sort of thing, going down to the parachutes, which are literally you sit on the parachutes in these. But when you look there, you can see you've got a bit of it's moulded in, and it's sort of quite crisp. But you just think some of them, it wouldn't surprise me if Edward come along with some aftermarket stuff and it ends up you basically just rub that down and there'll be photo etch versions of that. I think that's probably what they did on this one, is they thought, actually, if you're going for a basic sort of kit on this one, basic sort of build without putting too much detail on there, they've kept it quite sort of simple. But I mean, it is a simple aircraft, but you have got, you know, quite a bit of sort of raised riveting, not a huge amount of panel lines on there, but what there are, those are actually quite deep, deep enough for what you need, I think. Let's come over to here. Now the engine, this, I've got to say, the engine, I was going to say, doesn't look quite as good as what it does in the instructions. You do still have some of the fins around there, but the cooling fins on the engine, but not so visible to the eye. But you can, I don't know if it's gonna, if you might be able to hear that, not too sure. So there is texture to it, but I'm sure with a wash, a pin wash, we'll just get in there and make those fins a little bit more visible. But being able to have this in the position with the cowlings open to show the engine off, that's going to be pretty good actually. So that's the third sprue, and this is mainly the detail parts sprue. And like the bulkhead where the engine's going to fit on, we have got some quite nice detail on there as well. So again, it's not going to be dirty, but it's not going to be completely clean. It's a, you know, a 1948 designed engine. It's going to be chucking a little bit of oil around there, so it will give a chance to weather it up. And if you have those cowlings open, actually we've still got some, yeah. Actually, what's odd is on the cushions for the seat, you've got the straps there as well. So, okay, instrument panel, so you've got dual instrument panel in there. it was pretty Spartan in these things. Landing gear, as we say, we've got 2 sets of struts, one for extended position and one for sort of on the ground. But what is quite odd is you've got 2 sets of struts, however, non-weighted wheels. So even if you have it on the ground position where gravity's lowering that suspension, you're still going to have perfectly round wheels, which is odd because Airfix have started to do weighted wheels in some of their kits, which is odd as well because they are keyed as well. The wheels have actually got a little key in them to make sure that they go the right way up, but they're perfectly round, so that makes no difference. But I think they have captured the essence of the Chipmunk, and again we've got on there's the slight bit where it's I'm not too sure it's going to catch the light too well, but there's the ribbing where it was sort of done. It's stretched stretched fabric over sort of like the spars on there, it has that effect. And I've got to say there is actually some quite good detail going on that engine. So if we come in there, so hopefully you can just see on that bulkhead there, we've got a bit of detail going on, and the instrument panel got some raised detail. So decal will be decals, decals, duckles, stickers. Just call them stickers. Will be going on over that, so that they should bed down actually. So you've got those separate flaps, which aren't technically posable, but what you'll be able to do is that little location tab carefully bend over, and again with the rudder and tail planes. Again, not strictly posable, but very easily adaptable to make them posable. I don't think any sort of modelers would have too much of an issue with that. The prop looks okay, and I've got to say, I mean, it is a new kit, but there's no sort of flash, obviously no flash on there on any of these parts. No ejection sort of mouldings too much. Quite a lot of, and Airfix are doing this quite a bit now, is using these little tabs which need to be removed. But it means that when they get pushed out of the moulds, it's not affecting it. And again, there's no sink marks or anything, and no sort of pushing through whereabouts the ejector tabs are. So like here on this part, you can see we've got those little tabs which need to be removed, but that just helps them push it out of the machine without affecting. Although saying that, you do have some ejecting sort of round holes there. Now, how visible that's going to be, that is actually on the cockpit wall though. So I'm a little bit surprised about that one, but they are, I think that might be tucked away under the instrument panel. So might just need to bear that in mind, but that's the closest I've seen to having anything that's going to really affect. And let's come to the clear parts. The aftermarket resin pilots might do the job. Airfix, yeah, no, there is pilots. They just, yeah, have got pilots in there. Oh no, same with the Walrus. Does come with Irish markings though. Yeah, so yeah, it does seem odd that some. Actually, what I found really odd a while back is, I mean, I have noticed some manufacturers aren't including pilots and things like the 1 to 72nd Tornado by Revell's Tornado. Didn't have pilots in there, which is odd. But I've got to say, this is a clear bit of glass. Wow. Which is, okay. I mean, it is odd. You can see there's 2 different variants for the side. So that whole canopy part, that back part, is actually, normally, you'd just assume it'd just be one lump. But you've actually got to the side parts there, but there's 2 different variants. That's got a bulge on there, but it actually already looks like it's got a coating of crystal clear on there, sort of thing. And I've got to say, although that is bulging, I don't know how well that's going to show on the camera there, but those parts are concave or convex, which way you can probably actually see from the reflection there. What's quite good though is they're not really distorting the light going through. I mean, they are a bit, obviously there's going to be a bit of distortion, but they are very clear and very shiny. So again, good clear parts. So that's the rear side, and let's show you a little bit. There we are. So hopefully you can kind of see. Why is that? I've got that upside down, that's why. There we are. So it's not really, you can see the grid. If we look at that bit there, as I rotate it around, you can see that the straight lines through are still remaining quite straight. Obviously where that bulges there is some distortion, but where that bit's flat, yeah, that's keeping it flat. So that is some nice big front part to it there. So you're going to have a really good view in. So we have got some distortion going on there actually, but again, it's a weird compound curved surface going on. And of course, you know, windows along the top again, you're looking sort of straight on. So actually, I would say that that is, for clear parts, that is looking all right actually. Going to give good visibility into the cockpit. So I would say that that's looking fine. So what have we got here? Oh Lord, I don't know if there are any still in production, but there is an Irish aftermarket decal decal, who do both 72nd and 48 scale decals for models of aircraft flown by the Irish. Ah, I did not know that. That's yeah, cool. I mean, normally I just go onto Hannants and have a look on Hannants and see what's on there. And what I might try to do is if I can find out what aircraft I've got it in found my old Air Cadets logbook a while back, and it does actually say what the aircraft number it was I flew in, and if I can then try to find old photos of that, because I'm sure someone must have taken photos of that aircraft and stuck it online somewhere, and if I can find that, then that would be great to actually try to build the version that I actually flew in. Would be nice, because I think that's why people are going to be building that. So that's my little unboxing and review of Airfix's Chipmunk, de Havilland Chipmunk T10 is a lovely little trainer. It's a nice little kit. It's not going to be a massive kit, but for I guess an introduction into 48 scale, I think that's actually quite a good one. Detail does look good on it. Quality looks good. There's some things where you think actually perhaps they could have maybe done a few separate parts, especially those interior sidewalls in the cockpit. However, I think the detail is there. That engine, I wasn't expecting it to be so much of a detailed engine and have the possibility to open the cowlings to show it off. So I think that will be quite a nice little display piece as well. And if you're doing that, you're not going to need to bother about pilots. I will keep my eyes out for aftermarket stuff on there as well, because I'm sure there will be some aftermarket stuff coming up for this, just to raise that detail up a bit. But going back to that old, and I mean this must be like, 40 years old tooling or more on this one, considering this didn't even have an interior, didn't even have any instrument panels or anything at all, this is actually quite a nice welcome addition. I think the detail on there is in scale. It's a good ribbing effect as well. So yeah, that's going to be my review. I hope you've enjoyed that. I'm hoping to get round to build it, as I always try to do when I review something. I do actually want to build it and then come back to it later and actually see how it goes together, because I think that's how you really find out how a kit goes. But it's been summer, I've not been doing too much modelling recently, so need to get back into the habit of that. So I've been Rob. Hope you have enjoyed that. Many thanks for the comments as well. Didn't expect anyone to be watching, to be honest, on a Monday afternoon. So cheers, thanks very much. If you haven't already, hit subscribe. It is appreciated and those sort of things. And what I'll do is try and get some more high resolution pictures, stick it on the website as well. That's robsmodels.co.uk, getting a bit behind with things on there. But hopefully as we go into autumn and summer holidays and autumn and all those sort of things, get back into modelling a bit more. Anyway, catch you later. Happy modelling. Thanks for everyone. Hope you've enjoyed it, and hopefully I'll see you